Welcome to the September 7th meeting of the Lane Community College Board of Education. My name is Rosie Pryor. I'm the chair of the board, and I'm calling this meeting to order. The first thing on our agenda is our land recognition, and I would like to call to the microphone Ms. Nadia Lucci Tort, who will read our land recognition. Thank you. Will you pull the microphone down? Thank you.
We begin our meeting with the acknowledgement that the land we are on is the traditional homeland of the Kalapuya people. Kalapuya were stewards of this very land for over 14,000 years before their traditional way of life was forever disrupted and destroyed. We start our meeting with humility and reverence for the original inhabitants, the Kalapuya.
Thank you very much. And welcome to the foundation. Are there any changes or additions to the agenda? There being none, is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
That was Lisa.
Second.
That was Mike. Can we have a unanimous consent? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. That brings us to the president's report. Dr. Bulger.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to first start on a somber note and would like to take a moment for a moment of silence for an LCC Board of Directors member. This is when the board was apparently called the Board of Directors. Lawrence Perry. He was a dedicated board member for 16 years and also served as an Oregon State Representative. He passed away in January, and we just became aware of this just recently here in August. Let us have a moment of silence, please. Thank you. I also want to start by introducing new cabinet members. Dawn Whiting. Dawn, if you can raise your hand. Dawn is the interim Senior Associate Vice President of Student Affairs. Thank you, Dawn. And I'd like to also introduce Grant Matthews. Grant is the interim Vice President of Academic Affairs. They are both familiar faces at Lane. It's been a pleasure to work with them, and I want to thank both of them for their leadership. You may know also that we are in active search processes for the Vice President of Academic Affairs, the Associate Vice President of Information Technology, and the Chief of Staff. Those are all in process. The Vice President of Student Affairs position will soon be posted as we seek to fill this critical cabinet position. I've spent a lot of time listening and learning about Lane with faculty and classified professionals and a few students here over the summer. About 30 students attended a fireside chat, and I also held some open hours. The college today held a brief service to honor the memory of Lois Fricto, who was a member of the LCC family for many, many years. You may be aware of her. On the teaching and learning front, LCC hosted the Constructing a Brighter Future kickoff celebration. It was an impressive partnership of Lane County educators, local housing, transitional housing organizations, and community-based organizations, industry and workforce to align. What they're doing is aligning workforce and local housing shortages with the construction of 30 temporary shelters. On the legislative front, the Higher Education Coordinating Commission, the HEC, adopted its biennial budget request budget for consideration in the governor's recommended budget. But since Oregon is going to have a new governor in November, these recommendations will go forward to inform the budget from that governor early next year. And that is my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to take a quick minute and take a step backwards and take the roll.
Holly Johnson,
Here.
Angela Van Cross, present. Mike Eister,
Here.
Steve Mattel,
I am here.
Rosie Pryor,
Here.
Elisa Fragula.
Present. Do we have anyone signed up for public comment?
We have one person.
And is this person with us in person?
They're online.
They're online. So I don't have any of the information that Lisa has perfected in welcoming individuals to join us online. But if you are there and you're prepared to speak, we would welcome you now.
This is me. Can you hear me okay?
We can, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll just jump right in if that's okay.
Yes, please do. We ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes, and there is a timer that hopefully you can see.
I understand. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Members of the board, President Bulger, good evening. This is Jim Arnold again, and for one more day, I'm a part-time faculty member with the LCC Counseling Center. This is the third time I've appeared before you in the 3 years I've been here because in addition to my counseling and instructional roles, I've done my best to try and participate in campus life, even when there was no life on campus. For example, I served as a member of the Budget Development Subcommittee of the College Council last year. Now, speaking of budget, the purpose of my time here tonight is to talk bottom line and to recommend institutional action that may positively impact it. As we all know, in recent times, Oregon Community College enrollment has decreased dramatically. Comparing fall 21 to fall 19, total headcount at Oregon's two-year campuses was down 24%, and Lane suffered even more than that, down 30%. You'll receive the news about fall 22 later tonight. It seems obvious that recruiting and especially keeping our students has never been more important. To that point, a couple of months ago, I spoke to you about the imminent demise of the academic progress standards system. In case you're not aware of the specifics, this program identifies students every term who earn less than a 2.0 GPA and or complete fewer than 67% of their attempted credits. It then provides an intervention corresponding to a student's alerts level. This program has been for years the cornerstone of retention efforts here and is currently being phased out as of this summer. While we still have students in the pipeline, recent feedback illustrates just how valuable the program has been. In just the last couple of weeks, here's what I've heard. One student who just completed the 1 credit back on course class mandated at Alert 3 gushed at how valuable the course was, stating, quote, "I think this should be a required course for every student." Another student just now returning to studies for the first time since 2019, when she was dismissed academically at Alert 4, stated that it was, quote, "nice that someone was there watching out for us." Now, I repeat, it seems imperative we keep every student we can. The APS program was designed to help with just that. I am at a loss to understand the rationale for eliminating this effort, although it appears that administrators who are no longer employed here made some short-sighted decisions based on a data set that failed to take into consideration the impact of the pandemic on academic performance. In short, the academic progress standard system should have never been slated for elimination. I believe student retention is an institutional issue and merits serious attention from all of us here in this room. I ask you to please direct the current administration to first reevaluate the academic progress standard system's discontinuation, and second, articulate institutional philosophy with respect to student retention. Our bottom line and perhaps our survival depend on it. Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I understand Colin Burek is on Zoom. Did you wish to speak to the board? Not hearing anything, are you?
Panelists. She.
She?
Colin, are you wishing to speak? We've unmuted you, so you should be able to speak. Colin, we'll try one other option. If you would like to speak, are you able to use the raise your hand feature? Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. And is there anyone else present who wanted to be heard this evening? No? Just waving, huh? I was all excited there for a minute. Okay, then that concludes the public comment section of our agenda. Thank you for your help so far this evening with that. I do need to acknowledge that one of our board members is not here this evening, and Austin Folnaghy is excused this evening. Okay, moving forward to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent
moved.
agenda?
Second.
Is there any item that any member of the board wants to remove from the consent agenda? There being none, Tammy, would you call the roll?
Holly Johnson. Aye. Angela Van Kraus. Aye. Mike Ister.
Aye.
Steve Mattel.
Aye.
Rosie Pryor
Aye.
and Lisa Fragile.
Aye. Okay, the consent agenda is approved unanimously, and we'll move on to action items, the first of which is the health professions construction contract amendment. Dr. Bolger?
Yes, I'd like to introduce Tom Goodhue, who is going to address all of these items.
So thank you, Board. I'm Tom Goodhue, Capital Construction Manager here. We have 3 items from the bond projects here before you. First one is the health professions contract to get started under construction. I think it's a really exciting time. I've given you a packet. I think best bet is to open it up to you guys and let you ask questions. And
Do board members have questions? Yes, Angela.
I think I asked a question about this in advance, 2 questions, I think, 3 questions.
yeah,
Sorry, Tom. I was hoping to just sort of talk through those. Happy to do that in whatever manner suits. If you want to talk about some of the responses you gave, or if you'd like me to ask the questions, I'm happy to do that.
don't have it in front of me. So if you'll ask, I'll
I can even
see
read
what
your
I could-
answers.
no.
I could do it all. I could just monologue here.
Okay, I do have a copy now.
Okay.
So I'll start with, your first question has to do with the value of construction of where we were budgeting. So with that one, as I said here, we set a budget of 32 million roughly at the first of the year. And in that we had a construction budget that was at about 24 million. We're about 5% over that at this time. Combination of things that go into that, certainly the escalation of construction. We've also added a little bit of scope here and there to that construction. Some of that is items that when we budgeted, we considered them owner supplied. So things like some of the AV equipment and some of that stuff that we were going to buy directly, we rolled those into the construction contract. So it's still balancing out. We do have some contingency in our budget as well. So we are still within all of that. It does give us concern with purchasing equipment and furnishings for the new building. Those will be purchases that come down the line. And unfortunately, the escalation continues on. So you'll hear that as a recurring theme tonight on each of these projects. That's where, we want to make sure we can build all the building. We can always add furniture and equipment. So we hope that we can come up with donations, other sources. We'll be looking at what we have in our existing stock so that we can make them operable. Sure, make these buildings functional when we move in, but it's not necessarily our final answer. Does that help on your question?
Yeah. May I ask a follow-up?
Please do.
So I dug deep in the board docs and turned up this LCC master plan from November 4th, 2019. Budget relative to bond amounts. And it looks like our new building was budgeted at $24 million. And so with a budget of 32 as of now, it seems like that was at the bond, a very high bond amount, which I think is the one that we're getting. So I guess I'm just wondering if we have a sense yet of where that's going to end up shaking out, like what's going to end up on the chopping block, because we've already spent our money.
Well, there was a long list in the original bond. And I think, we're focusing right now on these 3 projects, as well as we're looking forward to upgrading the science building. the Math Science Building. So right now we're kind of focusing on that and doing some other improvements. We do have unallocated funds that as we get through this, we'll see where some things fall out and look at prioritizing those items. So I can't say what's on the chopping block per se, but we also have a limited amount of what we can do. And we've, based on the past administration, as well as talking with people, we've kind of prioritized these three. Certainly the health professions, because we had state money. So we wanted to get that done. The ITech building, Florence was one that was in dire shape. So that's where these three came out of and where we're looking for the state fund matching being the math building. So that's where we're prioritizing.
Other questions from board members? Observations? Yes.
Well, it's observation really, and a thanks to Angela. I read the packet probably just like everybody else. I had questions, perhaps just like everybody else. I'm not asking very many of them because Angela did such a nice job asking them for us. So I'm just recognizing and thanking her for her diligence on behalf of the board.
I agree. I'm going to put myself in the queue. It feels as if these are really pretty significant choices, Tom and Dr. Bulger. I'm not sure where the board's comfort level is with all of this. I recognize that I have absolute faith in your work. What I'm trying to get at is along the way, for example, when we were promoting the bond, we feel like we made certain commitments about what we would be spending the money on and so forth. And so I appreciate the fact that you're coming back on a regular basis to the board and processing with us these changes that we're experiencing. I recognize that a lot of these changes are a function of what's going on in the world and what's happening with the cost of materials and so forth. Somewhere along the line, it is potential that board members could begin to slide outside our comfort zone in terms of who's making the final choices, the buck stop choices about what stays in, what gets left out. For example, you made a philosophical statement that I thought was really helpful when you said, we want to be sure we can at least build the buildings. I want to make sure that the members of the board agree with that approach, that we want to be sure we can at least build the buildings. And so I just ask my colleagues to perhaps think about that as we go along here. And we keep being forced into these awful choices and expanded budgets for buildings that we were planning several years ago and couldn't possibly predict we would be going through the kinds of economic shifts and changes that we're going through now. But I want to keep all of you on the same page as the board. Make sense? Mm-hmm. So I just would ask that you help us stay with you along the way as you're doing. I appreciate that.
We hear you. We hear you completely on that. And we'll make sure that the board is well informed as the project changes so that the board is able to weigh in before those changes occur to the extent possible.
One of the things that we've talked about amongst ourselves a little bit is relying on our wonderful foundation to step up and help us with some of these gaps and some of the expenses that we're not going to be able to cover with the funds we thought we were going to have on hand. And I worry that those gaps are just proliferating and it's going to be more and more challenging to take a very focused capital campaign or whatever out into the community. And so it's getting more complicated every month that goes by. So anyway, those are just some of the random thoughts.
Thank you.
Any other questions or observations for Dr. Bulger or Tom? Yes, Lisa.
Yeah, just piggybacking on your comments. I'm fully supportive of the prioritizations. These are clearly all buildings that are going to enrich our community and which will hopefully help us target workforce development and increasing our enrollment. But I do feel like we've asked several times, what is not going to make it into the plan? What will be on the chopping block? And I know it is early, but I think it would be helpful to have an understanding of what those decisions might be. So,
I think that's what I'm getting at as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just, we need to be with you when those choices get made.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We'll make sure of that.
Anybody else on the board want to comment or question? Yes, Mike.
Well, should we charge the administration with coming up with prioritizing? Because we know there's going to be not enough money to do everything because of inflation and supply chain and all the other things. I don't know that we want to do that now, but we may want to do that in 6 months when we know more, or
Maybe what we could do, to your point, is now that we've highlighted this and our sense of growing unease over the sliding, increasing costs that we're experiencing, is for you to recognize that starting to grow some level of anxiousness about where this all leads. And if it's too early for you to truly help us understand better what's potentially on the chopping block, what the prioritization might be. If you could at least in the short term forecast kind of when is it likely that you would have better information to help us understand those issues. And then we can make sure to plot that on a board meeting agenda so that the board has the opportunity to hear and evaluate those recommendations. So in the short term, if you could let us know when we could expect to talk about that with you, and then we'll make sure that we put that on the calendar. Does that work for everybody?
That works for us.
Yeah.
We can manage that.
I think, as a capital construction manager, we have a new administration. So I'd like to buy a little bit of time and hear what the administration.
Yeah.
No, Dr. Bulger is diligently working on her priorities, trying to figure out the place. We have other people coming in as well. So I'd like to.
And I don't want you to guess,
Yeah.
I want you to have the facts to the degree that you can know them. So, yeah, I think we're prepared to wait, but not until it's too late.
No, I really do think that we understand the urgency. And so there is an urgency, and this did predate me, but we understand the urgency. We'll make sure it happens.
Okay, so do we need to move on to health professions, or have we in a way covered all of them?
I think we need a motion to get this improved.
I'm sorry?
We want to approve a motion.
Oh, Lisa?
So I move that we amend the Fortis construction contract to allow the college to construct the new health professions building and increase the contract value from $4,767,186 with an additional contract value of $20,831,734 for a new value of $25,598,920.
Is there a second?
Second.
I will give it to Angela this time. Angela's the second. Is there board discussion? Did you want to speak to your motion?
No, I did not. Thank you.
Okay. Will you call the roll, please?
I will. Holly Johnson. Aye. Angela Van Cross.
Aye.
Mike Heister.
Aye.
Steve Mattel.
Aye.
Rosie Pryor.
Aye.
Lisa Fragula.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries. So the next one.
Next item. This is really more of a housekeeping item. This is again for the health professions project. It is for the architecture engineering contract. And while we've built up a few change orders that adding scope, but we're approaching that point where we would need to have board approval we're over that 100 million and approaching that 150, or not 100 million, 100,000, excuse me. A lot of different numbers. Plenty of money in the bond. That 100,000, we're at a point where as we're moving into construction, it seemed appropriate to come forward to you and let you know about this and ask you for the formal approval which also will allow us some flexibility should something come up in construction that we need to adjust an architect's contract a little bit. So with that, I'll pause again and let you
Okay.
guys talk.
Questions from board members? Angela?
Well, there's the question that I asked in advance about this being an addition, which I think you've already answered, Tom. And you were saying this is actually a bit of a savings? and
Well,
offset?
overall in our budget, and again, when we set the project budget up, I put a line item for architecture design. To beat them up enough to start with so that we were allowed to grow again. Sorry to the architects about saying I beat them up.
Other members of the board? Questions on this?
I move that we amend the Fortis Construction, Inc. contract to allow the college to construct the new health professions building and increase the contract value from $4,766,186
I
with
think
an.
that's the last
wrong one.
one.
Oh,
B.
I had,
We need to be on B.
I,
Click on the
Amend
next.
Robertson Sherwood is where we're.
well, somebody else do it because I thought I had it. I thought I had it up. So
Okay, I move that we amend the Roberts and Sherwood Architects Professional Services Agreement contract to increase the contract value from $2,613,243 with an additional contract value of $121,950 for a new value of $2,700,293 plus $34,900 in reimbursable expenses for a total value of $2,735,193.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
Lisa? If you wish to speak to your motion,
No.
is there any board discussion? Would you call the roll, please?
Holly Johnson,
Aye.
Angela Van Cross,
Aye.
Mike Ister.
Aye.
Steve Mattel.
Aye.
Rosie Pryor
Aye.
and Lisa Fragula.
Aye.
Thank you. Item 3C.
Okay, this is the more complex of the three. I will admit that. I think based on the questions from Angela, I expected those kind of questions, so thank you. This is a change order. Some of it was kind of expected. This is for the Florence project. We went into this. This is one of the more complex because it is a renovation, and renovations are always tricky when you go in and you try to start with as minimal amount of work as you can, kind of, and address it. Obviously, we got into it. We found a few things as building was a little more broke than we hoped. Just, being a 50-year-old building, it's at that age. Some of the big things, we did have a couple of things that when we bid it out originally, even though we did not include them in the initial GMP because they were still bidding things out, we did re-roofing the newer classroom building, which we knew it was at the end of its life, but we wanted to get a separate price for that. So that's a big chunk of it. And I detailed some of that out. We also got into the demolition and we found that the core electrical gear was beyond repair, essentially. So that was a last minute thing that when we got the electricians in and they opened up the box, the engineers had thought they could hold it together, and it did not seem like a best value proposition. I'll word it that way. A lot of the other stuff is just things that we found along the way, more demolition than we hoped. We found things that needed to be abated from asbestos or lead that we had hoped we wouldn't find. And it's a hard one to tell until you get in there. We found damage in joists and things like that, for some rot, that again, demolition, repair aspects of that. There were a couple of programmatic things that as we got into it, really, we reconfiguring a couple of classrooms that just didn't make sense to put back the way they were. So there's some changes in there. We City of Florence came back with some requirements that we hadn't anticipated at that time for some more landscaping, as well as some changes in the way they want us to hook in the water line. We're adding a fire sprinkler system, and that was another one of the alternates that the classroom building, the building was not sprinkled before. So we thought the new roof and getting a full fire sprinkling system were good safety measures in value. So those were added in. Those were big numbers. We found the sewer line that runs out to the street had sagged and was plugged and full of things. Yeah, okay, I'm digging a trench next to it already. Well, we got into the pottery lab and we found that the drain lines under the slabs were full of clay. We had not expected that. But it's a lot of those kinds of things. When you look at, for those of you that love the detail reading of all my things, there are also a lot of things, there are a lot of pluses and minuses. We also left some things behind. We got some credits and it's very confusing. I spent 2 months to get it to this point where it's almost understandable. But that's, so it's a lot of little things that added up to some big costs.
Questions from board members? Yes, Angela.
On the same LCC master plan budget relative to bond amounts from November of 2019 that I was talking about earlier, the amount that we have down for Florence is $13 million. And this budget says, I think 9.2 now. Does it look like we're going to save some?
Yes, I can say that with, we really are trying to take care of pretty much everything. Again, don't have any money for furnishings and equipment. Yeah, we're gonna, it'll be functional. When you go there in October, it'll still be a little rough, but it will be functional. This will carry on. So, but yes, this is one that we're rebalancing. And
Lisa?
Yeah, I live in a 115-year-old house and I know what it's like when you start to investigate things. You dread having to open anything up. So I understand what you're confronting there. And I also am really excited to make these investments in Florence. I think the community is a place that we can grow. And if I recall from the campaign, the bond campaign, what is that word again? Like on the money that we're spending for upkeep that we were taking out of, I can never remember this word, the deferred maintenance.
yes,
Right. So I'm assuming that we are going to also be taking care of a lot of
Yeah.
deferred maintenance.
that's like this clay pipe or this pipe
Yes.
full of clay. Yeah, we'll probably address, I'm going to say 85% to 90% of deferred maintenance, which is really about as good as you can do in an existing building.
That's great. That's really great.
So
Really good point. Other comments? Questions from board members? Lisa, that was exactly the thought I had. Every home and garden show I've ever watched where they're flipping a 100-year-old house, the foundation's broken and the knob and tube wiring has to be replaced and yada, yada, yada. So it sounds like that's what we've run into. And I couldn't agree more that these are great investments for us to be making in Florence. And the thing that's on my mind now as I listen to each of these 3 reports and updates is, when is our next bond oversight committee meeting? And we need to have a really good presentation for them about these changes and what we're doing and, you know, how this affects what is their understanding of what we said we would do with the money.
we're scheduling it for October 24th, I believe, as we were just discussing that earlier today. But yeah, it's some updates that, you know, of where
I
we're
might
at.
try
with
and
all of it.
attend that meeting and just listen.
Great.
Yeah, watch the dynamics, see how that's working out. Yeah. Do we have a motion?
Yes,
Holly,
I can make a motion to amend the Lease Crutcher Lewis contract to allow the college related to the major maintenance of the Florence Center and increase the contract value from $6,898,045 with an additional contract value of $1,283,534.40 for a new value of $8,181,579.40.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
That was Mike. Holly, do you want to speak to your motion?
Sure. I just want to piggyback on what Lisa just said, and we know that the work at Florence Center is well needed, and so, yeah, I agree that they should be in the know and of how, we are spending the money and understand that we support them and how they're going to utilize the spaces that are going to be created for them. And so, thanks.
Thank you. Any board discussion? Want to call the roll?
Holly Johnson,
Aye.
Angela Van Kraus,
Aye.
Mike Ister,
Aye.
Steve Mattel,
Aye.
Rosie Pryor,
Aye.
and Lisa Fragula.
Aye.
Thank you very much, board. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
thank you for
Yes.
reading through all those numbers so carefully on all of these. It's
Thank you. Steve?
Just a follow-up comment. Is, yeah, I think probably, I'm not normally in the habit of spending whatever it was, some $35 million without saying a word. So I'll get a couple words in, I guess, here at the end. Happy to do it. And I just wanted to see if technically, if we include the questions and answers that Angela submitted and that were responded to in written format ahead of time into the minutes, because I think a lot of us are relying on that information to move forward with these, with approval of these action items. But the public sort of doesn't see any of that. It just feels a little bit strange. I would just hope that we're including that information in the packet to reflect the full discussion that happened.
Sure, we'll make sure of that.
Good idea. Thank you. Moving on to discussion items. The first is the president's priorities and Dr. Bulger.
Thank you for that. It really is my pleasure to share the president's priorities again and the 2022 and 23 strategies. Just a little bit of background for those of you who've not heard about the president's priorities before or for some time. I first shared these 3 priorities for LCC with the board in July, and they are fiscal condition, enrollment, and also institutional culture. These priorities were based on my observations and my preliminary understanding of the institution within the context of community colleges in Lane County, Oregon, and the broader external environment. I have shared these priorities with nearly everyone I have met in the last few months to get their feedback, which has overwhelmingly been positive. At the time of the board's acceptance of these strategies, I shared that I would work with the president's cabinet and bring back strategies for these priorities. I want to introduce the 2022 to 2023 strategies today. Next slide. Thank you. The tone of these strategies is focus and alignment. We wanted to focus on what is necessary to strengthen the institution and meet the needs of the community. Engagement of the employees in the college was an important consideration. The strategies are also a result of needing additional information about LCC for planning and decision-making as we emerge from the pandemic. Next slide. The first is fiscal condition. The fiscal condition of the college includes the budget and reserves, but also pertains to its overall fiscal health. Next slide. The strategy this year is to help stakeholders gain a shared understanding of the fiscal condition of LCC through an external review by a blue ribbon team, if you will, and the formation of an ad hoc task force to hear the recommendations from the consultants. Next slide. This year, we will present a plan of action to the board in January. Next slide. The enrollment priority of the college includes the systems and practices around attracting and retaining students through to completion of their educational intentions over a lifetime. Next slide. Again, the strategy this year is to help stakeholders gain a shared understanding of the enrollment system of LCC through an external review by a blue ribbon team and the formation of an ad hoc task force to hear the recommendations from the consultants. Like the first priority, we will present a plan of action to the board in January. Next slide. The institutional culture priority of the college involves alignment with the institution's mission, vision, and core values. It is connected to the institution's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Institutional culture is also connected to how we improve our operations so that they function well. We believe that a strong institutional culture will have high levels of trust, communication, engagement, and a sense of belonging. The college has recently completed a baseline assessment of the campus climate through a national survey. Next slide. Our strategy is to use the survey results to engage the college community in courageous conversations. We will present the results of the survey to the board this fall, as well as a plan of action in January. Next slide. We also intend to continue to measure our progress and report to the board. With that, that concludes the presentation, and I'll take questions.
Questions from board members? Yes, Mike.
I'd just like to commend you on very quickly identifying 3 really important areas for a college to focus on and wasting no time at all. And I guess laser-like was the right phrase, zeroing in on those 3 things.
We have a great team.
Anyone? Yes, Angela?
It sounds like it's going to be a really busy January. So I guess
Just a little louder.
I said, it sounds like it's going to be a busy January 2023. So I'm wondering, in terms of implementing the plans that come from all of this really important work, what might we expect on sort of timeline for that? And I know that, the team is still being sort of brought together and building and all of that really important work. So I don't know if you have a timeline yet. It may be too early to know.
No, we actually do have a timeline, and so the ad hoc teams can be formed after this meeting with the acceptance of the board with the presentation that I've just given. We have consultants engaged certainly for the fiscal condition, those consultants, and we're looking at consultants for the enrollment section of the priority as well. And so once those are in place, then we will certainly get started. The consultants will be doing their work over the next couple of months. January just gives us a little bit more time to have some discussions internally and to ensure that the vetting takes place.
Yes, Lisa. Oh, Angela, did you have more?
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you and echo what Mike said about this. Seems very on the nose from my observations as well, and I'm really looking forward to it. So thank you.
Lisa?
Thank you. So I was curious how the ad hoc task force would be structured and if it would include both internal and community stakeholders.
It will include board members and also internal members, faculty, classified professionals, a manager, a student, hopefully, on each of those task forces, and community members as well, certainly for the fiscal condition ad hoc task force, the budget committee of the board. Individuals from there would be asked to join as well. So it would be a representative group of stakeholders who would be able to hear the recommendations from the consultants and be part of that group that brings those recommendations to the board.
Great, thank you. And I just want to say, of the three priorities, I think you have not only been doing your homework since you've arrived, but I know you were listening critically prior to your arrival, including watching our board meetings. And the first two, I think you clearly identified how critical and important they are. But I'm also really appreciative of the third one of institutional culture, because I feel like we talked about that as a goal when I first joined the board in 2019, and we still have significant work to do. So I'm excited for that goal.
That's nice to hear. That certainly is echoed by the leadership team as well.
Great.
I have Holly and then Steve.
I agree with what Lisa said. First, thank you for this presentation and for recognizing the need, the importance of the first two, the physical and the enrollment. But I also am curious about the institutional culture strategy, goal, and wondered if you also plan to seek consultants from outside, or is that something, again, is it the same strategy, the buildup of the community, the board, the ad hoc committees, or do they include any blue ribbon consultants from elsewhere? Because we do have a lot of work in that area.
Mhm. This one is, I believe that the leadership team actually listened to the board in this respect, that for institutional culture, there's already been a diagnostic. We've got a baseline of information. There was a Gallup climate survey that was completed by a number of employees in the institution, and that was done in May, I believe, of this year. That is the data that we are looking at right now. And we want to present that data to the board so that you can see that yourself, since that's such an interest of yours as well. And so you'll see that for this particular priority and the strategies underneath it, that it's slightly different than the other two, where we want to take a real deeper dive and start to do an assessment there. We already have a start with institutional culture. And so you'll see in how we're laying out that particular set of strategies, we're going through several steps that will involve taking that data, going to the employees in the college, getting their input and their feedback, having some what we call courageous conversations around that data. What does it mean? What does it not mean? One of the things we noticed in the data is that we have individuals who are probably engaged in our institution, and some individuals who are not engaged in the institution. It was very clear to us when we looked at that data, and we had a debriefing by the Gallup organization. So this was professionally debriefed for us, and I believe that we have them under contract perhaps for another survey, and that one will take place in 2024, just to give us a bit of time to have some of the projects and plans implemented, and then see how they are working. And we will pivot and iterate as time goes on, just to make sure what we're trying to achieve is a stronger culture. We see that we must have a sense of purpose in our institution collectively, a sense of order, operational efficiency, and a sense of caring. And all of those will build trust and the collegiality that we want in our institution. So these are just my observations. I tell the team all the time, these are just my observations. Let me share them with you, and you let me know if they are correct. But all of the people that I have talked to have started nodding their heads and said, these are the right ones. So and the board is doing the same. So we certainly appreciate the support and are looking forward to getting started.
Steve? Holly, were you not done?
Oh, no, I was just going to say thank you for introducing courageous conversations. They're not fun, nor are they easy. But when those conversations I just hope that the leadership will keep in mind that safe spaces is also important when you're having those courageous conversations. Very important that the people are in a safe space to have those conversations. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I just want to take the focus back to the first two items, fiscal condition and the enrollment issues. As I think Lisa alluded that as a board, of course, we've been discussing those things, prior to your arrival. And I know you're aware of those things. Those are concerns, that we all have. You mentioned that you're going to bring in some consultants. We haven't talked about cost. Perhaps we don't need to right here and now, and that's totally fine. I just wanted to put it out there as one board member and invite other board members to share the sentiment that you've clearly identified issues that we all seem to agree with. You've got a lot of kudos for those, and to do a good job, it's going to cost, and we ought to be prepared to respond to those requests when they come forward.
Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments for Dr. Bolger? I really appreciate the approach. Personally, it's just refreshing that you're taking a data-driven approach to these priorities and not rushing to come up with strategies before you feel like you have the information you really need in order to make good recommendations. And I've got to believe that the team supports that approach as well. So looking forward to next steps. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go forth, do good and avoid evil. So item 4B is measure 114. Dr. Bolger?
Yes, we have prepared information about Measure 114. It's in your packet, and I'll turn it over to Brett to give details.
Thank you, President Bulger, Chair Pryor, members of the board. You have in your packet a summary at the board's request of ballot measure 114. Ballot measure 114 is one of 4 measures so far approved for this November's general election ballot. Measure 114 deals with firearms. It would set a new procedure in Oregon for purchasing a firearm that you would have to go through, basically apply with the Department of State Police and go through a process, have a background check. And it would also ban the production, sale, possession of magazines with more than 10 rounds of ammunition. And so I didn't know if the board had specific questions to this measure, but I tried to provide an overview of it. And I can do my best to answer questions for measure 114 or the other 3 measures if you have.
Why don't I
questions.
just add to your presentation that the reason this is on the board's agenda is that I received a request from other individuals in the community who are interested in seeing Lane Community College Board take a supportive position with respect to this proposed measure. Obviously, that recommendation is not here. It's in the board packet for discussion. So I would open it up to questions or comments from board members at this point. Yes, Steve?
Is there polling data out there yet on this one, Brett?
I'm not aware of any polling on this measure.
Lisa?
I just have a process question. So, would we be looking at a resolution at the next meeting, or would we?
That would be my thought. I wanted to get some feedback from members of the board about whether or not you even want to move forward with this. So that's kind of what I'm looking for, some guidance from my colleagues about whether or not you want to support this, not take no action. What's your pleasure?
So, personally, I do support measure 114. Having had to do room clears or evacuations for an active shooter with a classroom of second graders, is shaking to the core. I also can't help thinking about the significant number of shootings that have occurred in a very short time in the United States, including one at Umpqua Community College not very long ago. I think that these measures are common sense, and but they could go a long way towards creating some important change that would actually make people safer. And for me, the most significant one are the number of rounds that
any firearm that is owned by a civilian needs to hold. So I am personally supportive of it. And I would be interested in hearing what my fellow board members think. And then I do have another ballot measure that I'd like to discuss maybe after this conversation is done.
Mike?
I'm not volunteering to write the resolution, but whoever writes it, I think it's important that we relate it directly to safety of students at LCC and staff at LCC. We're not doing this as taking a political stand. We're taking a stand in the interest of the safety of the people who work on campus and attend the college.
So you're supportive of the board,
I am.
at least receiving a draft resolution?
Yeah.
Steve and Holly, did you want to speak?
I am too.
You are too. Steve, you are?
Did you want to?
Just in the way that Mike stated it, as it
Okay.
relates to LCC.
Made notes.
staff and students, yeah.
Steve?
Another question for Brett. Is there a, consortium of community colleges or other institutions of higher ed that would potentially get together and, approve some kind of a resolution as a group, as opposed to doing these one-off by institutions?
OCCA.
So thanks for the question. Because this would be considered advocacy, you're allowed to pass a resolution as a board. You would have to draft that resolution on your own. Public employees, staff are not allowed to participate in that. At this time, I was just kind of reviewing the updated list of endorsements. There's not a single education institution that has endorsed the ballot measure to date. There's primarily it's churches and civic groups, but as of yet, there isn't a member of higher ed that has come out to endorse it.
And the follow-up question is, can somebody remind me of whatever policy we may have in active policy about firearms on campus today, regardless of whatever the measure may bring?
We are a weapons-free college. At the bottom of every page on our website, there is a link that takes you directly to the board's page with the policy printed as required by Oregon statute. And as you enter campus, all of the main walkways that come in display signs that state that this is a weapons-free campus. That includes concealed carry. So there are a limited number of exceptions that can be made that require the president's approval and board notification for that to occur. Most of the times that would be a firearm safety class where people do have to bring a firearm to the class. But those are very rare instances.
Thank you.
My question for you is, since it doesn't appear that you have any information about whether or not OCCA itself they're a lobbying group, so they can take a position or recommend to their board a position, right?
Correct.
So what I would like to suggest is, I want to hear from Angela, because we haven't heard from you. You're okay. Well, what I'm going to do then is I'm offline. I'll work on a draft resolution. But I also ask, could you check with OCCA and find out if their board is contemplating taking a position and if they're going to draft some resolution that colleges could use?
I will ask OCCA and report back to the board. I would be surprised only because it's been a while since OCCA's had its last meeting. And I believe that this measure was certified by the Secretary of State since the last OCCA meeting. So there probably wasn't a direction
Haven't had a chance to talk about
board
it.
members to work on this. And I was just trying to find here the next OCCA board meeting is October 7th. So that's really going to make it kind of
Yeah.
difficult to turn it
Yeah.
around in time to be effective by the
Okay.
time ballots are mailed.
Okay, thank you. Angela?
Brett, given your comment about advocacy and we need to do this on our own as a board, is it okay to ask you to reach out to OCC, or should one of us do that?
I'm allowed to do information requests. I'm just not allowed to participate in the drafting of a resolution
Okay.
or advocacy from that point forward.
And you would let us know if we were trying to drag you across the line.
I will definitely let you know. And
I don't think it'll be very hard to find a template. There are a number of groups who have endorsed it. And so it won't be that hard to find language and bring draft language back for the board's consideration.
Madam Chair, I can just say that the OCCA meeting that I attended, I believe I've only attended one, it didn't come up. This did not come up at all. We have very good relationships with OCCA, as you well know, and so we would be very happy to go ahead and ask them about this and to be able to assist you in whatever way we need to.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So that's what I'll do. I'll go offline and consult with my colleagues and bring back a draft resolution that the board can consider and edit or whatever. Lisa, you had something you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how many people are aware that there's going to be a Lane County Parks bond that is going to be on the ballot in November. And the pickleball people are very proactive about pickleball. They're very passionate. And they have managed to get themselves on that parks bond and get it. If it passes, a chunk of that money will come to help build the facility at LCC for pickleball. So I would think that it would be a great opportunity for this board to support the Lane County Parks Bond.
Questions from colleagues? I have one, and it's for Michael. When all the negotiations for the pickleball courts were happening, was there any reason to think they wouldn't happen if the pickleball people didn't get funding from a Lane County Parks Fund?
There never was a contemplation when I was talking to them that they had to have a certain influx of money. It was much more general than that. Basically, the document says they will provide the funding. So what Mr. Wold, Eric Wold, who was my contact, said was we're going to go out and beat the bushes, and I'm sure this is part of
One of those bushes.
One of those bushes, right? And so I if they don't get that money, my guess is as Lisa said, they're very passionate. They'll find the money somewhere else, but this never came up.
So comments from the colleagues about, is a parks bond something the College Board of Education should be involved with or not?
I think so. Yes.
So you're a yes. I need to think about it. Steve,
That's where I am on both of these, by the way. That goes back to the previous one, not because I don't support them personally. Those are pretty easy positions for me to take personally on both. Heavily in support, but I'm also thinking, about the institution and how far do we want to stray from our mission, and how much does that dilute our I was going to say firepower. That's not the right word, but that's the one that's coming to mind right now. For our political capital for other things that might be of greater importance to the institutional success. Those are the concerns I have on my mind. I need more time to really think that through. It's not for lack of support in general, but. And then there's an efficacy issue too. Like, who does anybody care? Does that matter? Have we moved the needle by having invested our support in favor of either of these or other initiatives? Does that matter that much at all? Do we have more to win or lose? I just don't know. I'm thinking about it.
Yeah. Mike.
I'm on another board where we have had conversation about reminding ourselves the difference between a general jurisdiction body versus a limited jurisdiction body. They may both have elected boards, but we're a limited jurisdiction focusing on a specific mission. We're not the state of Oregon. We're not the city of Eugene or Springfield. We're not the county. And so I'm kind of thinking along the line, Steve, is that unless it has something I can relate very specifically to LCC broadly, I'm inclined to stay out of the endorsement advocacy business.
I understand. Angela, your point of view?
I think I feel kind of generally similarly. I don't want to go too far outside of scope, although very supportive of both measures. I do think that the first one we discussed does have a specific safety impact for LCC, and so I can see a strong argument for supporting there. And certainly I want the pickleball people to be successful. Delightful folks. But I'm not sure that it makes sense for us to come out and as a board in support of Parks Bond for that piece. Certainly I would personally be willing to endorse and support.
So I guess I think where this leaves us is it's sort of up to you, Lisa, if you want to go to the trouble to draft a resolution of support on the chance that your colleagues will support it at a subsequent board meeting. If based on what you've heard tonight, you choose to go a different direction, then I understand.
I have a question for Dr. Stalliard.
Yes.
Dr. Stalliard, I was under the understanding that the construction of the pickleball court was going to include the construction of bathroom facilities that would be available also for other recreational uses for other LCC activities.
No, that was not my understanding, but no, that was not my understanding, because when I inquire from my colleague, that was not part of the plan. I am concerned that as a community college and people coming from the community to use our facilities, they are using Jiffy John. But I was hoping, but my hope was soon dashed because Mike said that's not part of the package.
Mike?
So there is a section in that pickleball document that talks about the college will work with the Pickleball Association to work on trying to come up with the money. But there's no specific mandate that forces either side to do that.
Okay, thank you.
I'm glad you asked that question.
Same understanding you did.
I thought it was part of the deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah, maybe I'll
helpful.
consult with you. So thank you.
Brett?
Just wanted to get back to you on your question about OCCA. I was able to get a response from John
That was
Wyckoff in that time. Yes. And he reminded me that the OCCA board is not just elected community college board members. It's made up of the presidents and the board members together. And because the presidents are public officials, the OCCA board cannot take a position on anything other than legislation. If it was legislation referring a question to the ballot, they could take the OCCA board could take a position on that bill. But once it became a ballot measure, no. And so the OCCA board will not be considering 114.
Thank you. Helpful. Very good just-in-time information. Holy cow. So I think we've covered item 4B. Are any other questions or comments about the measures? All right, we're going to move on. Public safety report, Dr. Bolger.
Yes, I want to ask our Director of Public Safety, Lisa Rupp, to come forward. We have submitted a report. We understand that this is an annual report that the board has requested on public safety. And what we've done for this year's report is to provide some general information about the activities that have been occurring in the public safety department. And so our Director of Public Safety, our fantastic Director of Public Safety, is going to be sharing that report with you.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Good evening, members of the board and Dr. Bolger. As you have no doubt already seen that the submitted Public Safety Board report, I'm here to answer any questions that you might have of my report.
Comments, questions from board members?
I'll ask one. Thanks for the report. I read it. Generally, my sense, it gave me a sense of the number of calls that you respond to and the types, the categories they fall into, the severity levels, that kind of thing. What I guess I wasn't able to glean, maybe you could comment a little bit, is on your sense of adequacy of the staffing that you have to respond to the issues that you encounter.
Thank you. That's a great question. Currently, we don't have adequate staffing to cover all areas of main campus and the downtown campus. And this is due to a lack of quality applicants. And it's not just public safety or law enforcement or security, it's everywhere. So we've been finding that a bit challenging. And to give you a little context, we started a part-time hiring in December, and we only have 3 applicants currently for our academy. We had one that didn't pass a background check. So it's been a little rough, and I appreciate Dr. Stolliard's support for us and Dr. Bolger's support, and they've been very helpful with suggestions and staffing issues and allowing us to seek out more part-time employment.
So to be clear, then you're saying it's not a budget issue.
No, it's not a budget issue. Not. We are currently down 3 full-time people, and that's due to attrition. They've some of the younger officers that we employ ultimately want to be sworn law enforcement, and we're a good training facility because we accept cadets from the criminal justice program and we train them to become sworn law enforcement. And we've had some go to Oregon State Police, Eugene Police, Lane County Sheriff, Lynn County Sheriff, Springfield Police. So we are good trainers of future law enforcement officers.
Yes, Mike.
Periodically, I've asked, and I would like to know where our current stand is. Do our officers make traffic stops or?
Generally speaking, no. If they currently find during the daytime when there's a heavy population of students, employees, and sometimes childcare brings the kids on a walk. If somebody runs a stop sign and is speeding, an officer will generally stop and speak with them about their driving behavior. But as a general rule, no, we do not.
Thanks. I think it's a good idea.
Yes, not safe.
Holly?
Hi, thank you for such a thorough report. I will not lie and say I read the whole thing, but what I have seen and what I think I'm missing with the recent uptick in activities that are happening around our country. I didn't see anything in here, and I know that you mentioned staffing shortages, and I've heard about those citywide and statewide. And it sounds like we're facing the same issues. I didn't hear about active shooter trainings with even the limited staff that we have. I see some other trainings here like fire drills, lots of fire drills, but
yes, and we generally do active shooter training and active shooter drill. We didn't get to because of COVID. And we have one that we're planning with the FBI and local law enforcement agencies to have a drill so they can come out and get familiar with our campus. And that will be hopefully in the summer. And then our plan also is to provide active shooter and workplace violence training for our colleagues on campus during in-service training on September 22nd.
next summer.
This September, we will be doing training during in-service regarding violent actor.
For the staff and
Yes.
and then the next training, is it because you're waiting to fill positions? Did you just say in the next summer?
This
For the
coming
other?
summer, yes. Because of COVID, we couldn't really put on those types of trainings.
That just seems like such a long way away with everything.
Well, we provide active shooter training for any department that would like it, and we advertise it through the weekly. It's not something that we can force people to go to.
I think I'm mostly talking about the staff.
Yes.
Your staff, not.
Oh, our
not the-
staff.
Not the
yes.
community college
We
staff.
have quarterly training
Okay,
for active shooter.
okay.
Yes.
I didn't see that in your.
Sorry, I
report.
misunderstood you, Holly.
Okay,
Sorry.
I'm done.
I gave you more information than you needed.
Did you have another comment?
I do, yeah. Something else would be useful for me in the future, not in this particular report, is as a board member anyway, it's just context. So I don't know that much about security forces on campuses around the country, but a sense of how we compare, so if there are metrics out there at the state or national level, like what is a sufficient force for a school of our size? What does that look like? What kinds of training should they be exposed to, and how are we keeping up? I don't know what all the other metrics might be. I'm just throwing out a few examples. But if there are some metrics out there that we can grab onto so that we can have a sense, not just of the response rates and things like that, but on the proactive side, how we're keeping up in terms of staffing, training, et cetera.
Thank you. That's a great question. And what I can do is research that and provide that to Dr. Bulger to submit to you.
Thank you.
Mike.
Not only for the quality of our own life on campus, but knowing that we are sort of a training ground for future officers. I'm really pleased to see the extent of training in equity lens, diversity, inclusion, de-escalation, all really important things for people who are learning to go to their next step in law enforcement will get as part of their experience here. And those that stay here, that's just great if they have that and maintain that during their time that they're on the force here.
Thank you. I've been told by past public safety officers with LCC that the training and education that they received with us have made them better law enforcement officers.
Great.
Any other comments or questions? Great report.
Thank you.
I would just suggest that if board members do on review have additional thoughts about information you might like to see in a subsequent annual report from public safety, forward those to Dr. Bulger, and we can make sure that we expand the report perhaps to cover that kind of information. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. You bet.
Thank you,
Thank
Lisa.
you. We are at item 4D, fall opening update. Dr. Bulger.
Yes, we're really excited to present a fall opening update to you tonight. And so we'll have Don Whiting, and we'll also have Grant Matthews as a team come up to do that.
Welcome.
Good evening, Chair Pryor, members of the board. I'm glad to be here. Before we get started, just apologize in advance that some of the slides that we're going to show you tonight were not prior to today in your packet. We wanted to provide updated information and data, and so we didn't put it in earlier. One of the slides will also include an updated enrollment report. So it would be more recent data than the one that is in your packet under enrollment.
Well, good evening and thank you, everyone. I feel like I maybe need to bring a little bit of a step stool to my next meeting. So thanks again. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to share a little bit of the work that we've been doing over the summer to welcome our students back to fall term. For the first time in quite a while, it really actually feels like a fall term. The student services building that I work out of is buzzing. We've got students coming into orientation. They're seeing academic advisors. Their appointments are full. It's really, really quite exciting. And I can't say enough how exciting it is to be in person. Starting in June, we return to in-person new student orientations. This is a really collaborative effort with our campus partners to provide student resource information, financial aid, academic advising, and it ends with students selecting classes and registering. So there's a call to action with these orientations. The sessions have been very well attended. We've had a total of 10 orientation sessions in person, including evening and Saturday sessions. There have been a total of 284 attendees so far. We have one more orientation to hold before fall term begins, and that will be next week. The feedback forms that we're asking students to fill out show that they are finding these events very helpful. Our advising team is also incredibly busy. Students are seeking out assistance from their academic advisors, and that's what we want. That's a helpful step in their enrollment. We want to show, we know this because our advising appointment system shows the appointments are full. Since June, academic advising has seen over 1,200 students scheduled appointments and over 1,700 drop-ins. The advising team is offering both those appointments and drop-ins virtually and in person. We also launched a new student call campaign to help students who are working through the steps to enroll. So this is another call to action campaign. We're working with our existing pipeline of students that have applied for admission and just need a little bit of guidance, a little bit of hand holding through those next steps. So it's different from the nudge campaigns that we've held in the past, but again, asking students to take a call to action when we're speaking to them. Next slide. Enrollment. So a little bit of good news on enrollment front. Our new student enrollment is trending up. So as of this week, we are currently up by 14.2% in new student headcount over last fall. We have over 3,600 applications from new students, and we've converted into registrations about 37% of those. And just to give you a little context, in fall of 2019, those conversion rates were about 39%. So we're not that far off from where we were pre-pandemic. We believe that the orientations and some of the additional conversion calls have been working and have helped to keep our new numbers up. We do still have some enrollment challenges though. So our overall enrollment is still trending down with continuing and returning students. So it's hovering between 3 and 7% down. It's closer to 3 right now, but we know that that's going to fluctuate and has fluctuated over the last couple of weeks. The college did launch an enrollment campaign for students who have not attended since summer of 2020. They were sent mailers, text messages, and emails. It's hard to say if these efforts are going to yield results yet, but we'll have more information after fall's term starts. One thing we will continue to do, looking towards retention, is looking at the success of the students who did attend the orientations and tracking those. We know that since the new student orientations were well attended, we need to continue those in winter and in spring term. We think that those are providing a really good positive experience based on what students are telling us. Classes haven't started yet, so we will see enrollment fluctuate between now and our add drop period, the second week of the term. But our services are fully in person and fully staffed Monday through Friday. And we're so excited to be able to provide those services.
What's the first day of class?
September 22nd.
27th.
Sorry.
Yeah. I was going to say, wait a minute, we're going to be busy on the 22nd.
All right. So included in the slides for tonight is an updated enrollment chart for the trends of where we are 3 weeks out from the start of this the quarter. And so you can see our trend line is there. We're hovering close to fall 21 and moving upwards towards the first day of class. Go ahead and move on to the next slide. I wanted to just kind of give a quick picture of what classes are looking like right now for fall term as we approach the start of the quarter. It's looking like right now we have about for almost 5,000 of our enrollments are in traditional classroom setting, with about 2,400 of our enrollments in a hybrid setting, and about 5,800 of our enrollments in an online setting. So to kind of get a picture, if you take all of that, students making a commitment to some in-person activity is right around 56% of our enrollments, whereas online is, a fully online experience is about 44% of our enrollments. That kind of gives you an idea of what the quarter is kind of looking like for us of on-campus activities versus activities that students are participating in online. One of the things that we are looking at is how we're doing with our schedule and how we're meeting the students' needs. Right now, our fill rate across the campus for our classes is at about 71%, which is really great, especially since we're still 3 weeks out from the start of classes. Online classes are at about 76% of capacity, and our traditional and online courses are hovering around 68%. These numbers are going to fluctuate, particularly because we still have some orientations and other things planned for some of our cohort programs who have not enrolled yet and are still planning to enroll in areas like health professions. So we'll be watching these numbers. I wanted to dive a little bit more on the next slide and into this trend and looking at where we're going as an institution and some of the things that we're going to be keeping an eye on over the next couple of years. And that is really looking at where students are participating in our classes compared to pre-pandemic. If we look at 2019, we had about 63% of our courses in a traditional setting, in a traditional classroom setting, and only about 26% of our offerings were online. As we're coming out of the pandemic, as we're starting to try and get back to our campus more to a normal open services and other things, our traditional classrooms are filling at about 38% of our offering, whereas online is now 44%. So you can see that quite a drastic difference between pre-pandemic and now our current situation. We're going to be keeping a close eye on that trend and watching to see over the next couple of years where our students continue to put their preference for participation, where their lives are putting them, and how we offer our classes accordingly. So those are some of the things we wanted to share as far as what it's looking like as we get into the start of fall term, where our students are, what types of activities they're starting to engage in as we get to the start of this exciting year. So any questions?
Mike?
It's not too surprising post-COVID to see the increase in online and hybrid. Can you give us any comparators to within the state community colleges and nationally?
So the conversations that I've had with other chief academic officers suggest that at least in the community colleges, it's a fairly consistent trend. Students are still participating online. They're still making that decision for online courses. Many of our sister schools, though, are seeing, like we are, that there is an uptick in traditional classroom participation. And when I talk to deans across campus, they are hearing a great demand for in-person classes. And in some of our areas in the arts and humanities and other areas, we are adding new sections to our face-to-face as students are starting to enroll and filling the courses that were on the schedule. We're saying, well, it looks like we have additional demand for face-to-face courses, and we're adding those back in, which is something that we hadn't been doing in previous quarters. We'd been more adding online classes wherever there was demand, and this time it seems to be more evening out with demand in both face-to-face and online.
I had a follow-up too, Rosie.
Yes, please go ahead.
Can you give us an idea of the split between, or maybe there's not a split. I'm wondering about students that are enrolled in classes where they have to meet at a certain time versus they can log in and do their coursework at any time.
Yeah, I can dive into that a little bit deeper if you'd like me to. I don't have that number in front of me. We are still offering some sessions that have that remote synchronous option, but we have decreased the amount that we've offered in a remote synchronous format and are focusing instead on either traditional classroom or the asynchronous online options.
Thanks. Good question.
I have Steve and then Angela. I hope I got that right.
Would you just dive into and explain a little bit more the capacity numbers? You showed some 76% and 68, whatever, depending on the types of courses. I'm just wanting to understand a little bit more about how you get to those numbers. And I'll just say a thing or two more and then listen to your answer that, 4 or 5 years ago, whatever it is, we had something close to twice as many students on campus. So, and I know we've shrunk our faculty accordingly, but we're also a very flexible institution. If we were to get significant number of additional enrollments right now, we would, get on the phone and call into our part-time staff, right, to try and build out. So how do you set capacity?
Yeah, that number is based on each of our courses has an enrollment max that we assign to the course. And that's based on a variety of factors. It might be based on some of our contractual obligations to what size the class can be based on the instruction. It might be based on accreditation standards of the teacher to student ratios. It also is classroom capacity. So all of our classes have an enrollment maximum that is placed on them, and we base the capacity on that. So if a course is 25% of the enrollment max, we would say that it's at 25% of its capacity. How it's compared to how full could we fill that class? What we try to do is maximize the enrollment in every course based on what the capacity of that particular class is. So if a class can have 35 students in it based on either accreditation or contractual or classroom capacity, physical classroom capacity, then we would call the class at full capacity when it has that full 35 students. If it's under that, then we would say, well, there's still capacity in that. That capacity is used to determine whether we really should be looking at opening new sections. If we have the majority of classes in a subject area that's hovering around 80 to 90% capacity or 100% capacity in some of those areas, then that's a good indicator that we need to add new sections to accommodate the demand in those areas. So that's that flexibility that you're talking about, is as we see in particular courses, they reach their capacity, we add new sections so that new students that are enrolling can fill those courses and move on, and we can, adjust accordingly. We use that number just to kind of figure out, does our schedule match the demand?
Yeah. So it's not I think what I'm hearing then, it's not an institutional capacity number that you're sharing. It's the current set of courses that you've offered, which can be changed even in fairly quick order if we needed to.
Yes.
Angela.
Thank you. I think my question is along the same lines, and I think you've already touched on it a bit. I was looking at the same slide, the capacity slide, and wondering if it's if the breakdown of students in these different modalities is by design, i.e. like what's available for them, or if it's by the choices that they're making. So like class modalities are adjusted based on student enrollment. And I don't know if this is even an appropriate question for me. I might be too far into the weeds. So tell me to stay in my lane if I'm out of line.
Happy to answer. We do, it's a little bit of both, right? We put together an anticipated schedule based on what we believe are the modalities that students will need to continue their education, also based on what we hope are modalities for their success and otherwise. But we try to remain nimble as an institution and adjust those modalities based on what the demand is. We have an exceptionally talented team of academic deans who watch very closely the schedule as it's filling and make adjustments as necessary. If they see early on trends where students are really enrolling in one modality or another, they will start to look at how they can adjust their schedule to add courses in the different modalities and then adjust them accordingly as those courses fill. So it is a little bit of a dance. There's a little bit of both. We set an anticipated schedule and then adjust it according to what we see as the demands going forward.
Assuming that we adjust the other way as well, if courses aren't filling.
Yes, absolutely. There are scenarios where we cancel courses that are not meeting enrollment expectations.
So I have a couple questions. One is, if you do have courses that are reaching capacity and you need to add courses, are you able to find the part-time faculty available to, the employment situation all over the country being what it is, are we experiencing that as well?
Yes, we do have some limitations, particularly in subject areas that are more specialized. We do have that issue in some of our career technical programs where it's difficult to find faculty members generally, and finding part-time faculty members is even more difficult because they are able to find very busy employment elsewhere. But many of our subject areas also have that same scenario. Largely, though, we do have a dedicated group of part-time faculty that are engaged with the institution and interested in the success of our students, and they step up very frequently to be there and take on classes at the last minute and, figure out their curriculums in short order to provide for our students. And so generally, we're able to be nimble and find solutions.
That's great.
I would say also that this is not a unique issue to Lane. And this actually predates the pandemic, or it's probably been the case since we've been offering courses, a lot of courses. So this is particularly the same areas come up, mathematics and some of the career technical education programs. So the same courses always come up. So this is not unique to Lane. Just wanted to let the board know that.
Thank you. My other question is, Dr. Bulger talked with us earlier about the enrollment diagnostic, if you will. And I hope that deep dive or that evaluation analysis will include a really hard look at our marketing and advertising programs. It's often a challenge to measure advertising results, but I worry that over the years that I've been associated with Lane, we've probably underspent in some respects when it comes to marketing and advertising, and we've really kind of hamstrung ourselves in some respects in terms of our ability to rifle to the targets that might have the most opportunity for results. But I just hope that the diagnostic work that is done will take a critical look at that. And if resources need to be shifted, then I would be interested in hearing about that.
Thank you. We certainly will make sure of that. I've actually seen the proposal. So far, we haven't made a decision on that, but I've seen the proposal and it does include marketing and communications.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Are there other questions from board members for our illustrious new members? Congratulations, by the way, to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your report. That brings us to item 4E, which is the board retreat agenda. You have received it in the packet. It is a proposal for your approval. And I also sent an email to board members earlier today because at the end of our July retreat, I had committed to my colleagues that I would send a report to each of you to document what I thought I heard were the items that you wanted to be sure we had the opportunity to revisit in some form. And to note that, for example, the president's priorities was on that list and we addressed that tonight, but there'll be other things that are on the retreat 2.0 agenda. And then keeping that record will help us remember what we said we wanted to be sure to talk about, and we can slate those for subsequent board meetings. We're still, I guess, in conversations about precisely where we want to hold this first in-person retreat. We didn't get to do it together in July, and I'm hoping we will get to do it together in 2 weeks. Dr. Miles will come be here with us in person. So Dr. Bulger is finding out whether or not there's an alternative facility, for example, a classroom where we might hold our retreat together and still be able to fulfill whatever the requirements of the law are of us regarding streaming our board meetings and making them accessible and so on. I did give you a heads up that we'll conclude our retreat with an executive session so that we can talk about the president's evaluation and the bases we would like to use as a group for that evaluation. And Dr. Bolger will have some recommendations as well. So we won't be looking at a blank sheet of paper when we start to talk about what are the things we should be looking at. Are there any questions or any concerns at all about the proposal for the September 21st retreat?
Looks great.
Good, good. I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be great
Me
to
too.
be together and be able to do the things perhaps we didn't get to do in July. I think that's all we need to talk about with respect to the retreat. We will get you that information about location in a timely fashion. And other than that,
Someday it could be on a pickleball court, perhaps.
yeah, there you go.
They have actually offered to teach us how to play as part of one of our
Sounds like a
retreats.
great get to know you.
Yeah.
Do not like pickleball.
Oh, golly. Okay,
Play too, Mike.
we are now at the association reports section. Do we have someone here from student body?
They haven't started the meeting.
They're
yet.
not
think
here.
They'll start.
They
it.
will be here.
Okay, it was
The only
here,
one we have is,
these two,
just Frankie. She's on.
just Frankie.
Mhm.
Is Frankie online?
Mhm.
Frankie,
Hi, Rosie. I'm here.
great. Well, you're up.
I am up. Thank you. Very much. It's good to see all of you guys.
Good to
Missed
see
you last month.
Looking
Um,
forward to seeing you in person.
I know. I will be there in person next month. I'm actually homesick today.
Oh, no.
So I have the camera off, but I wanted to say, I'll just go ahead and start. My name's Frankie Kokenor, the president of LCCEF, and my pronouns are she and hers. Currently, LCC is bargaining with the college for COVID working conditions. We're hoping to have that wrapped up before the start of fall term. And then we're excited to see students come back this fall. And we're hoping that they're going to have a great sense of community when they come back. And it'll bring that back to us as well as employees. In welcoming Dr. Stephanie Bolger to our campus, we'd like to thank her for recognizing that classified employees are classified professionals and not classified staff. We are not just people who have blundered into whatever job we can find. We're professionals that have worked through schooling and training and purposely sought out employment at Lane Community College so we could give back to students in our community. We also would like to publicly thank Stephanie for having the fireside chats and the open office hours for employees to be able to schedule time to talk with her one-on-one. It's important that the classified professionals are heard because we are the ones that are enrolling students, setting up their financial aid, providing a safe and clean campus, among many other professional services that are provided on this campus to make the best student experience and education possible. As we start a new year where we foster relationships and look to rebuild after the long 2 years of pandemic, we would like the administration and the board to recognize the hard work of all of our classified professionals. And we would also hope that the college will find a way to thank and recognize all of the classified professionals that actually physically stayed on campus working in person and never stayed home. Thank you.
Thank you. I noticed that Adrian is not here.
She's
Is there
online.
Is she online? Oh, she's there. There she is. Adrian, you're up.
Good evening, members of the Board of Education and President Bulger. I'm very sorry I could not be there in person tonight. I'm Zooming from Chicago. I'm here to take my daughter to begin her time as an undergraduate. So it's a very important milestone for her and for our family. So I'm sorry I can't be there in person. I have a few brief updates on the work of LCCEA from this summer and a few comments of kudos at the end of the report. So what we've been working on most immediately is in-service planning as well as fall course preparation. Our faculty professional development program is very much engaged in planning for in-service, hosting a variety of activities, including the Faculty Connections 2-day new faculty orientation and mentorship program, which starts on September 13th, 2 days before the beginning of the official work year. And we're also very excited to welcome the inaugural cohort for our Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Faculty Fellowship Program, also beginning on September 14th. We're engaged in planning the LCCEA All Faculty Meeting. We'll be hosting a resource fair for faculty as well as a Shave Ice social. And we're delighted to host a welcome reception for Dr. Stephanie Bulger and new faculty on Friday, September 30th from 3 to 4:30 p.m. on the second floor of the Center Building lobby. And we would like to extend the invitation to all of you as board members. We hope you'll be able to join and participate in some social time and light refreshments on that day. In addition, we've been working on a number of things on campus, including we reached an agreement with the college in August on COVID working conditions for the academic year. And I would like to share the appreciation on behalf of LCCEA and the faculty for the very collaborative process with Mike Blade and Shane Turner. In addition, we received an arbitration award regarding the dental hygiene faculty. The arbitrator who held the hearing found that the LCCEA grievance about uncompensated teaching time affecting dental hygiene faculty was sustained. So there will be retroactive compensation going back to fall 2021 for the uncompensated teaching time that the dental hygiene faculty have been engaging in. And they will be compensated for their clinical instruction time that had not previously been compensated. In addition, the prospective award provides that there will be corrected workload calculations and accurate compensation, and we're working collaboratively with HR and always appreciate working with Anita Grogan, our payroll manager, who is amazing and one of the unsung heroes behind the scenes at LCC. In addition, we reached an agreement to resolve another grievance and an unfair labor practice. And as a result of the agreement, there will be cultural competence, professional development requirements for managers, training on the contract for newly hired managers, and annual training thereafter. There will be no unfair labor practice claim filed with the Employment Relations Board, all of which we anticipate will contribute to fewer contract violations and more proactive collaborative problem solving in the future. And we'd like to extend our appreciation for the leadership of Dr. Bulger. Off campus, we've been very much engaged in preparation for the next legislative session, including meeting with Senator Michael Dembro, the chair of the Senate Education Committee, strategic planning for the OEA Community College Council, which represents all of the community college locals throughout the state that are affiliated with OEA and very much engaged in legislative advocacy. We're supporting and advocating for the HEC's budget ask for community colleges. This is hugely impressive and wonderful news that the ask is at an unprecedented level of investment for our community college system. This would be a dramatic increase to the Community College Support Fund, and we are very much engaged in advocating for that and hope you will join in those efforts. In addition, the HEC's budget ask would provide that there will be a tripling of the Oregon Opportunity Grant, which serves our students with the greatest need. Hugely important for our community college students. As you can see from my background, we are also engaged in the work of the campaign for Tina Kotek. We are very hopeful that she will be elected our next governor of this great state of Oregon. And it is critically important for our community college system that we have someone who will support that HEC budget and make those needed investments in our system. In addition, we are participating in events with the Lane County education workers, including our first public appearance at the Lane County Central Labor Chapter Labor Day picnic earlier this week, which included networking with legislators and solidarity building within the local labor movement. Last but not least, some kudos and appreciation. I would like to congratulate our LCCEA Vice President for Learning Advancement, Wendy Simmons, on her unanimous appointment to serve on the OEA PAC board. In addition, I would like to express publicly congratulations to the former LCCEA Vice President for Part-Time Faculty and Part-Time Sociology Instructor, Amit Kapoor, on his investiture as a Lane County Circuit Court Judge. And I would finally like to express deep appreciation and support for our LCCEF colleagues. Classified professionals are critical and essential to Lane Community College, playing an especially important role in college operations, student services, and so many more to help ensure a vibrant learning and working environment at LCC. LCCEA stands in solidarity with LCCEF. Thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you, Adrian. Congratulations to your daughter. And now you can go to bed. We are at information reports. You have a number of them in your packet. Or do board members have any questions or comments regarding any of the information reports in tonight's packet? Lisa?
Yeah, I had a question for Dr. Stalliard. In your report, you mentioned that there's been a signed agreement with S3 to assist with the grounds work. And we had what I thought was a very interesting update last spring about S3. And, the program was talking about how they were going to continue to grow their capacity, but also their economic model. And so I just was curious, with that signed agreement, does that support them growing their economic model? What does that mean, the signed agreement?
Yeah, that they're providing a team of clients and supervisors to do our ground. So it is growing.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from board members on information reports? Steve?
The enrollment report's the one that I read first. I read them all, but that's the one I read first every time, because for obvious reasons, I think. And I appreciate it. There's a lot of, it's slice and dice in a bunch of ways. But I also want to, I don't know, maybe ask for some kind of a orientation to it. There's as a relatively new board member, there are measurements in there that to me anyways, are a little confusing, right? There's head count. That seems to be straightforward enough. Then there's FTE, and then there's FTE sort of as measured by different organizations. And then when I look to compare, what one set of numbers says we were at in 2018 to a different set of numbers that seem to have the same metric used, the numbers are not quite the same. If they're off by a small percentage, okay, whatever, that's decimal dust, I let it go. But sometimes they're pretty significant. And those numbers are so important as we try and rebuild. So I don't know, some kind of a primer at some point for newer folks, at least, if not for others, to help understand some of the metrics.
I know that Patrick wants to jump in here, but what you're asking for may take a little bit more time than we have this evening. So what we'd like to do is put together a dictionary, in a way, of terms might help, but then also a guide just to help to guide you through that report. We'll keep bringing it back because we think it's so critical. It's one of the 3 priorities, as you know. So we'll bring it back. But thank you for the question on that. But Patrick, did you want to add something?
Absolutely. Really briefly, Patrick Blaine, AVP, Academic Affairs and Institutional Effectiveness. We would be very happy, if it pleases the board, to bring the institutional researcher, Kathy Thomas, here to give a brief overview to the board of enrollment statistics and help you understand the data better, and any resources we can provide to you to help you understand what you see there, which are quite detailed every month. We'd be very happy to provide that as early as October or November, depending on how it works for you all.
We can work together with the president to schedule that. Good question. Any other comments or questions from board members? We're going to move on to good of the order. The first item now is a consolidation. You'll notice that on previous board members, we had called out the OCCA report separately and so on. What we decided to do was just consolidate all of on the theory that various board members are representing the board to various organizations. This is the point in the agenda where if you have a report to make or an update, we have historically been getting written OCCA reports. So we thought, why call it out in particular? The option exists. If Austin wants to make a report, he can. Are there any such reports that any member of the board would care to make at this time? Lisa.
Sure. So I just wanted to remind board members that the foundation is having a welcome reception for Dr. Bolger on September 13th. And that'll be in Building 30, which is the Health and Wellness Building. Wendy, can you remind me of the time? 5 to 7 p.m. And they would love it if we could attend as well as RSVP. I also put a reminder card at everybody's spot for the celebration event, the LCC's foundation, and that'll be at the Graduate. And hopefully it would be great to see the entire board at that. And then both Holly and myself will be attending the welcoming reception tomorrow night in Florence.
Me too.
Oh, great.
And Chris.
Excellent. Yay. And for the Florence community. So I just want to acknowledge that the foundation has been very active to start the fall. I know Rosie attended a Cards Up event, and there is an event coming up where people can get a special preview of select wines and help to select some of the wines for the celebration. And so they're hard at work at raising funds for our students, and I'm excited to begin working with them this fall.
Great report. Anybody else?
Not really a report, but just KLCC are busy trying to figure out their future and the how they're going to move forward with their station and what direction they're going in. And so they have some really good conversations going on, but to be determined, I guess, and to hear about the KLCC radio station and how they're planning on just moving forward and enhancing what they already have going, and but no big reports from them.
I would be willing to bet that KLCC is the #1 radio station in town. I don't have the data, but I'd be willing to bet.
No, they're my #1 station.
Yeah. Any other comments or reports? Then I just would call your attention to this board calendar that I put in places tonight. Gave you one too. I wanted to just flag for members of the board some things that are out of the ordinary and some changes that I proposed to the board calendar that we adopted at our July 16th meeting. The first is to call your attention to the fact that it's not a work session any longer. It's now a board retreat 2.0 on the 21st. And that the very next day is the LCC in-service. If you have not attended an LCC in-service, you've missed one of the greater experiences in life. And I really urge you to make time and come over to campus and actually sit in on that. It's pretty exciting and pretty uplifting. So I'm sure Dr. Bolger can get us the specific times when it'd be optimal for board members to sit in. I wanted to flag for board members that our board meeting in October is actually a Thursday and not a Wednesday. And that was purposeful scheduling to allow for religious observance. And also wanted to point out that at this time, it's our plan to meet in Florence for our work session in October. Wanted to point out that our board meeting in November is on the 2nd, and the OCCA Fall Conference starts the evening of the 2nd. So if board members plan to attend, and I recommend it because it's much more cost effective to attend that professional conference than it is to attend the national one. And there's a lot to be gained and learned from participating with the colleagues. That it starts the very next morning at Sun River. The real thing I wanted to call to your attention, though, are a couple of changes that I proposed for January. Typically, we meet on the 1st and 3rd Wednesdays of the month. The first Wednesday is our board meeting, and the 3rd Wednesday is our work session. And in January, we had adopted a board calendar where we pushed that back on the theory that we're going to have a board retreat later on that month, and also to allow for preparation of board packets and board materials, not right smack in the middle of winter holidays. But I would like to suggest that we change that back to having our board meeting on the 4th of January. I've consulted with Dr. Bulger and she's in support. Figures the college can be ready with this much notice. And since we're having a second retreat in 2 weeks, I'm just assuming that's our second retreat for the year. And so I'm suggesting that the board consider deleting the proposed January 21st retreat and just reverting to having a work session on the third Wednesday, which would be the 18th of January. I don't think we need to approve this tonight. You can contemplate this. You can go home and kind of match it up with your personal and professional calendars, and we can come back and talk about it next month. The other thing I would call to your attention is on the back at the bottom, I made a note that we've talked about being interested in having a meeting down in Cottage Grove. And so based on what we do know from Tom about the pace of, or others about the pace of construction down there, and when that federally qualified health clinic might actually be open and we could tour it, perhaps March or April is the right time to think about going down to Cottage Grove. So that's sort of up in the air until we really know when it's optimal to go down there. So just wanted to bring those things to your attention tonight. Again, we don't have to officially change anything or do anything tonight, but I will ask you to approve my proposed changes to January. We have one board member who will not be able to join us at a January 11th board meeting. And so my preference is to schedule board meetings to make it optimal for all of us to be present. So that's the real driver there. Any questions about the calendar? Thank you very much. That basically brings us to the end of our board meeting. We do have an executive session scheduled. We'll take a break for about 5 minutes and get set up for an executive session. If there is no further business or items for the good of the order, I'm going to adjourn this meeting.